All right, time has come. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat with What Does It Mean, covering all the latest hot topics in Minnesota sports. First up, Vikings signed former third-round pick Jonathan Bullard, defensive lineman, over the weekend to help replace Kenny Willekes, who hit the IR for the second time in 3 seasons. Meanwhile, reports are that tight end Johnny Munt will be fully healthy coming training camp as he returns from a knee injury. Got me thinking, what does it mean when looking at the Vikings' most concerning positions of depth? Not the starters, but depth. What position group scares you, Reggie, the most if the Vikings' top starter were to go down at some point during the season?
Oh, it's definitely tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it. I mean, like, they're expecting big things from Irv Smith Jr. this year. But, like, if he goes down, you're relying on Johnny Munt, who is coming off of a knee injury and mostly kind of known as, like, a blocking tight end. At best, it's just like, man, like and then you're looking at maybe this rookie or some of the Ben Ellefson,
7th round pick. I mean, I think we're getting into CJ Ham territory at that point. You're gonna have to get creative.
See, but they need CJ to be that fullback and that lead blocker. And what's interesting is like if O'Connell is kind of running McVay's style of offense, then maybe they don't use CJ Ham as a fullback as much because McVay really didn't do a whole lot of that either. But you look at that tight end position, because you look at depth on the line. Like, they got plenty of depth, on the defensive line. Linebacker. If Eric Kendricks goes down at some point, that's concerning as well. I mean, you would like to think Jordan Hicks would just kind of step in and do the job dutifully, but like, Eric Kendricks is special, man. Like, you predicted that he could lead the team in interceptions last week. Like, you got a linebacker that you're saying that about. Like, that goes to show how special he is. And so if something like that were to happen, that would be a big blow as well. But look at what they've done over the draft and in the offseason as far as depth with the DBs, where you're talking about, if one of those guys goes down, then, you can just kind of interchange some of those guys, like, to the point where you have so much talent back there where you're talking about employing maybe a 3 safety look with trying to get Bynum, Seen, and Smith back there. And so I think it's great to see that. They have a lot of good depth on wide receiver. You don't want to see anything happen to Kirk Cousins, because obviously the depth behind him, we saw what happened in that Green Bay game with Sean Mannion last year. But I think if all things are equal and everybody else is healthy, and you had to pick one position that really kind of gets you a little bit nervous, I think it would be the tight end position for sure.
All right, hear me out. CJ Ham moves to tight end. Alexander Madison and Dalvin Cook in the same backfield at the same time. Can you see it? Are you digging? Well, run a little spider 2 wide banana, little John Gruden fullback special. Come on, man.
I wouldn't be mad at that, but you look at look. It's a fun thought.
Yeah.
But you look at CJ Ham as a tight end, like, the dude is 5'11".
It ain't happening, Reggie. When he gets up against Nick and Joey Bosa on the edge, man, he's not chipping.
Yeah, and you're running out, up the seam and across the middle and all that. At 5'11" as a tight end, I don't know about that.
It ain't happening. All right, crush my dreams. All right, it's only Monday, but all right. Last one up. What does it mean? The Boston Celtics got slapped back to reality last night after a 29-point loss to the Warriors, tying things up 1 game apiece as we head back to Boston for games 3 and 4. 2 games under our belt. What does it mean when trying to predict the winner here of the 2022 NBA Finals? Is all the momentum now back with the Warriors once again? Was that game 1 just a fluke? We talked about, is there any gas left in that tank for the Boston Celtics and their road to get here to the finals and then still game 1?
Like I said, this could go a couple ways. They won that game 1 and really showed out in that fourth quarter, but then came out and got blown out in that game 2. And, we talked about the parallels between that 2012 finals and this one. where they came out with the Thunder did and they beat the Heat, and then they didn't win another game in that series. And this could play out that same way. It could. I'm looking at this box score from yesterday, okay? And the Warriors had 4 out of their 5 starters in double figures. Of course, Draymond only had 9. But you look at this box score with the Celtics. Tatum had 28, okay? Minus 36.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's like one of the worst ever. And then you look at Horford, Williams, Smart, all 3 guys that were, well, not so much Williams, but Horford and Smart in particular, who came up big in game 1, 2 points apiece. 2 points apiece.
Not going to work.
Jaylen Brown started the game in fuego, and then he cooled off as it went along. Like, you're just like, well, okay. And then you know, you got White coming off the bench. He only scored 12. And so that is a little concerning when you're talking about Golden State, because they had one of those Golden State thirds, 35-14 in the third. They went on that run and they never looked back. But what I will say is I think I saw enough from the Celtics in the first half that leads me to believe this series is going to be a long one, because they have kind of shown that when the Warriors hit them with their best punch, they can still punch back. Now, that third quarter was just insurmountable for them to overcome, all right? But this team is full of gamers, man, and I just don't put it past veteran guys like Horford. And then you look at guys like Brown and Tatum, who just kind of they kind of have no conscience out there, and they just go out there and they play. They're very talented guys, and so I wouldn't put it past them. But if you're gonna have like Jordan Poole heating up like he did, those 2 shots at the end of the third quarter, it's just like, good night, man. Like, if he's gonna be, you know, splashing it at the pool party, then this thing is gonna be over quick. But it's just so interesting because you're just like, the performances that you've seen, are they consistent enough to last over the course of this series? Because like, if Boston kept shooting it at the clip that they did in game 1, then they probably beat the Warriors by 10 or 12 last night. And then if the Warriors continue to shoot like they did yesterday, and the Celtics have the type of shooting performance that they did yesterday, then you're like, okay, Warriors in 5. But I don't think that I've seen enough on one side or the other to really make a decision on how like short this series is going to be. I think it's going to be a longer series, and I think it's going to be very telling what happens in game 3 on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think no doubt, if you're a Celtics fan, huge. We still won game 1. We head back to Boston with a split. That's a huge win for sure. Nobody even expected that. But I just think a lot of experts are still just looking at both these teams up and down and saying, I think if we play 7 games here, right, and we just stretch this thing out, more times than not, the Warriors should win this series, just because simply they have more talent top to bottom when they're on. And again, the road to get here for the Celtics was just so daunting and so grueling. I'll tell you what, if they do win this thing, that'll be one of the most impressive roads to the finals and championship victories that I personally have seen in probably a decade or longer. Pretty crazy when you think about what they had to do to get here. It's just absolutely wild.
I will say this too, Luke.
Yeah.
So the grit came back. I remember talking to one of my guys, and we were kind of just talking about how game 1 ended up, and we were just like, where's the Warriors' toughness? You know, they got back to that.
It starts with Draymond.
Draymond came out and he had a point to make, and they feed off that. It seems like Draymond just kind of trolls and just kind of plays the villain just to play the villain, but he plays it so well. And the Celtics were like, no, that's not getting in our heads. You know, Draymond is just doing what he does. And it's just like, okay, maybe it's not getting in your heads, but it is getting in his own teammates' heads. And that does a lot for the Warriors, because in that game 1, I was just like, man, these dudes are playing a little too finesse. Like, they don't have a dude that can, you know, ever since they lost Kevin Durant, a lot of people were like, they didn't even need Kevin Durant. Like, Kevin Durant could go get you a bucket. When the chips were down, when the game slowed down, you can give Kevin Durant the ball and ISO it, and he was going to go get you a bucket regardless of the situation of the game. That was a luxury. What you didn't have anymore, looking at that game one, you were just like, man, like, with how Boston just kind of poured it on in that fourth quarter in game one, they didn't have a guy that can just be like, hold on, give me the ball. Let me just go ahead and just kind of stave Boston off a little bit. Let me go down here and get 2 or 3 straight buckets and just let them know that, like, we're here. We're gonna fight you. They don't have that. Like, their hope is to, like, do all this ball movement, give it to Steph, hope he hits a 3, give it to Clay, hope he hits a 3, give it to Poole, hope he hits a 3. Like, all these finesse guys, you were just like, what about the guys that can just go in there, bang inside, get you a bucket and one, get to the foul line? They didn't have that. You didn't see that in game one. And so now, they play Warriors basketball and found a way to win game two in the way that they do, but they also got a lot of that edge from Draymond because they need that, because they are much more of a finesse team than just like, if you give Tatum the ball and put him in an ISO situation, he's going to go and get you a bucket. You saw that earlier in the game and in the third quarter a little bit. But, like, the Warriors don't have that guy, so they have to continue to play their style of basketball.
Right.
And their style of basketball is Draymond Green getting in people's faces, trolling guys, and just being that crazy dude out there.
Yeah, you hate to go against him, but man, he is a lot of fun. You love when he's on your own team. Going to be a lot of fun. Well said, by the way. Going to be a lot of fun to see how all this plays out in Game 3 back in Boston on Wednesday, 8 o'clock ABC.